It was a rainy evening in Seattle, the kind that made the city glow softly under the streetlights. Emma Parker stood at the bus stop, her small umbrella barely shielding her from the drizzle. The streets were shiny, and the air smelled of wet earth and coffee, a scent she always loved. It had been another long day at the art studio, and all she wanted was to go home, make some tea, and rest. But life had other plans that night. Plans she never saw coming. As she waited, lost in her thoughts, headlights cut through the mist. A sleek black car slowed near the curb. At first, she didn't pay attention. Cars often stopped nearby. But then she heard it. A voice she hadn't heard in years, warm and familiar. Emma? She turned sharply, her heart skipping as her eyes met his. Ryan Hayes. For a second she couldn't speak. It had been nearly 7 years since college. 7 years since the boy she once loved quietly disappeared into his own life. And now, there he was, standing just a few steps away, wearing that same gentle smile she remembered far too well. He stepped out of the car, rain gathering on his coat. "I thought it was you," he said, his tone both surprised and relieved. "You still carry that same umbrella." Emma blinked, glancing up at the faded floral umbrella she'd bought during their college days. "You remember this?" she asked with a small laugh, feeling a strange mix of nerves and nostalgia. "Of course," Ryan said, smiling. "You called it your lucky charm." That made her laugh again. A soft, almost shy sound. "Well, it seems to be working," she replied, still not quite believing what was happening. The rain grew heavier, and the sound of it filled the pause between them. For a moment they just stood there, two old friends caught between the past and the present. The bus she was waiting for arrived, brakes hissing. The doors opened, the driver glanced at her, but Emma didn't move. She didn't want to. Something about Ryan's presence made her forget everything else. The bus left, and Ryan tilted his head toward his car. "Can I give you a ride? It's pouring." She hesitated, only for a second, then nodded. "All right." The drive started quietly. The windshield wipers moved rhythmically, and soft music played in the background. Ryan's car smelled faintly of cedar and rain, a comforting scent. Emma glanced at him from time to time, noticing how he had changed. His hair was shorter, his jawline sharper, but his eyes, they were the same, calm, sincere, and kind. "So," he began after a moment, "you still live in Seattle?" "I do," she said. "Opened my own little art studio last year. It's small, but it's mine." His eyes brightened. "That's amazing, Emma. You always said you'd do that someday." She smiled, touched that he remembered such a small detail. "And you? Still designing buildings?" He nodded. "Yeah, I started my own firm. It's been a wild few years, but I love it." The conversation flowed naturally after that, about work, about life, about all the things they'd missed in each other's worlds. It felt effortless, like time hadn't really passed. The sound of the rain, the quiet hum of the car, and the way he occasionally glanced at her, all of it felt like something she had dreamed of before. When they reached her apartment building, neither of them wanted the moment to end. The rain still fell, tapping softly against the car windows. Emma turned to him, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for the ride, Ryan." He smiled, his voice gentle. "It was really good to see you again, Emma. I've missed talking like this." She nodded, her heart tightening a little. "Me too." There was a small silence. Then, as if afraid to lose the moment, Ryan said, "Maybe we shouldn't wait another 7 years to meet again." Emma's lips curved into a soft smile. "Maybe not." She stepped out, closing the umbrella as the rain slowed. Before she reached the door, she looked back. Ryan was still there, watching her through the car window with that same quiet smile. She waved, and he waved back before driving away into the night. Inside her apartment, everything felt strangely lighter. She placed her umbrella by the door and leaned against the wall, her thoughts racing. Of all the people she could have met that night, why him? Why now? The universe had a strange sense of timing. Emma made herself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and stared out at the city lights reflecting off the rain-soaked streets. Her mind replayed their conversation, his laugh, his tone, the way he said her name. There had been something there, something unspoken. She wondered if he felt it too. Outside, the rain continued to fall, softer now, as if echoing the calm that had replaced her earlier exhaustion. She smiled faintly, realizing that the evening hadn't been ordinary at all. It had been a moment she didn't know she needed, a reminder that life sometimes brings people back when your heart is ready for it. As she finished her tea, her phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen. It was from an unknown number, but she knew who it was before opening it. I really meant it. Let's not wait years this time. Her heart warmed. Without hesitation, she typed back a single word. Deal. And with that, the rain outside suddenly felt like a promise. A quiet beginning to something she had once wished for but never expected to find again. That night, Emma slept with a small, hopeful smile. Somewhere deep inside, she knew her life had just taken a turn. Not a dramatic one, but the kind that quietly changes everything. And it all began with a voice she hadn't heard in years and an old, lucky umbrella. The next day felt different for Emma. The world outside looked the same. Grey skies, slow rain, quiet streets. Yet inside, she carried an energy she hadn't felt in years. Every time she tried to focus on her paintings, her mind drifted back to Ryan's smile, the sound of his laugh, the way he had said, "Let's not wait years this time." It played in her head like a song that wouldn't stop. At noon, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Ryan. "Dinner tomorrow. My treat. There's a new place by the lake. You'll love it." She read it twice, feeling her heart race a little. It wasn't just excitement. It was something deeper, something like remembering how to hope again. She typed a short reply. "I'd love that." The next day came quickly. Emma left work early to get ready. She didn't go overboard, just a soft dress, light makeup, and her hair left naturally loose. She wanted to look like herself. When she glanced in the mirror, she saw a woman who looked both nervous and quietly happy. Ryan arrived right on time. His car pulled up outside her building, and when she stepped out, he smiled the same easy smile that used to make her heart melt years ago. "You look amazing," he said simply. "So do you," she replied, trying not to blush. They drove to the restaurant, a small place near the water with soft lights and calm music. The lake outside shimmered under the city lights. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. The kind of place that made you want to stay longer than planned. Once seated, conversation flowed naturally. They talked about work, mutual friends, and small everyday things that somehow felt meaningful. It wasn't forced. It was effortless, like they had never lost touch. At one point, Emma told him about her art studio, how she had started with nothing but a few brushes and a rented corner space, how some days were hard but rewarding. Ryan listened intently, his eyes focused on her, not interrupting, not pretending, just listening. That quiet attention meant more to her than any grand compliment could have. "You've always had that spark," he said when she finished. "You believe in what you do. That's rare." His words warmed her. "And you? You sound like someone who found his place too." He laughed softly. "Maybe I built the firm, but it's been mostly work. No time for much else. Their eyes met for a second. The kind of silence that says more than words ever could. She looked away first, her cheeks warm. He didn't push. He just smiled, and the air between them felt easy again. Dinner moved quickly. Good food, light laughter, and the feeling of two people finding their way back to something familiar. When the waiter cleared the table, Ryan leaned back and said, "I never realized how much I missed this. Just talking to you." Emma smiled softly. "I missed it too." Outside, the night had turned cold. The city lights reflected across the lake, and the water rippled gently with the wind. Ryan walked her to the car, and as they stood near the water, he said, "Do you remember the night before graduation? We sat under that old tree behind the library." Emma's eyes widened a little. "Of course. You were talking about moving away." He nodded. "I almost told you something that night, but I didn't." She looked at him curiously. "What was it?" Ryan paused, smiling faintly. "Maybe I'll tell you next time." It was a teasing line, but his tone was sincere. And for some reason, Emma didn't need to hear it yet. The mystery made her heart feel alive again. On the drive home, the silence was comfortable. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shining under the lamplight. When he pulled up in front of her apartment, she turned to thank him, but Ryan spoke first. "Can I see you again?" The question was simple, but it carried more weight than it sounded. She didn't even need to think. "Yes," she said softly. He smiled, looking relieved. "Good, I'll call you soon." Emma stepped out, and he waited until she entered the building before driving off. Inside, she leaned against the door, her heart still fluttering. It wasn't just nostalgia. It felt real. Something building again, quietly, naturally, like a spark catching fire after years of silence. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about how easy it had felt, how much she had missed being around someone who understood her without trying too hard. She realized she was smiling again, not because of something specific he said, but because of how he made her feel. Seen, heard, safe. Over the next few days, they started talking more. Quick texts, short calls, random photos from their days. Nothing dramatic, just small pieces of connection. When he texted, "You make Mondays better," she laughed and replied, "That's not hard. Mondays are the worst." It was simple, innocent, yet full of warmth. Every moment with him began to pull her closer. She found herself painting softer colors, humming while working, checking her phone more often. Her co-workers noticed her brighter mood, but she didn't explain. Some feelings were too delicate to name too soon. One evening, Ryan dropped by her studio unannounced. He brought coffee and a single sunflower, her favorite. "You once told me they're the happiest flowers," he said with a grin. Emma laughed, shaking her head. "You remember too much. I remember the things that matter," he said simply. That line stayed with her long after he left Dot as the week ended. She stood by her window, looking at the city lights again, thinking about how life can change quietly, not with thunder or drama, but with something as simple as a familiar smile returning at the right time. She had spent years focused on work, convinced that love was something that happened to other people. But now, standing there, she realized something had shifted. Ryan wasn't just a memory from her past anymore. He was becoming part of her present, and maybe, just maybe, her future too. That night, as the rain returned softly against the glass, she whispered to herself, almost smiling, maybe timing isn't always wrong. And somewhere across the city, Ryan sat by his desk, smiling at his phone, looking at her message that said simply, "Tonight was perfect." For both of them, It was the quiet beginning of something they had both been missing, old feelings finding new life. The evening air was cool and clear as Emma stepped out of her apartment, excitement and nerves blending quietly inside her. Ryan had invited her to dinner again, this time at a cozy restaurant downtown, one she had always wanted to visit but never did. She arrived early, standing near the entrance, watching the soft golden lights inside flicker through the glass. When she saw him walking toward her, wearing that calm smile that had slowly become familiar again, her heart steadied. "Hey," Ryan said warmly. "You look beautiful." She smiled. "And you're late." He laughed. "Traffic. I swear, Seattle never changes." Inside, the restaurant buzzed softly with quiet chatter and music that made the air feel warm. They got a table by the window overlooking the city lights, and for a moment both just sat there, taking it in. It wasn't the kind of silence that needed filling. It was the kind that meant something was building, quietly between them. Ryan broke it first. "You know, I almost didn't text you that day." Emma looked up, curious. "Why?" He shrugged. "I thought you might have forgotten me. Or worse, moved on completely." She smiled gently. "I did move on. Just not far enough to forget you." His eyes softened at that, and for a second, the world around them seemed to fade. The waiter came, they ordered, and soon conversation flowed easily, about work, life, silly college memories, and everything in between. But there was something different tonight. Beneath the laughter, there was honesty, quiet, raw, and real. After the main course, Ryan leaned back, looking thoughtful. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Of course," she said, setting down her fork. He took a breath, his voice steady but soft. "I've always regretted one thing about college. The night before graduation, I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't, and it bothered me for years." Emma felt her chest tighten. "What did you want to say?" He hesitated, then met her eyes. "That I liked you. A lot. More than I ever admitted to myself." Her breath caught. He continued, his tone low and sincere. "You were my favorite part of college, Emma. I thought about telling you so many times, but I kept convincing myself we'd have more time. Then life got busy, and I just left." Emma's heart raced, the room suddenly feeling smaller, quieter. She searched his face, finding no trace of playfulness, only truth. "Ryan," she whispered, not sure what else to say. "I'm not saying this to make things complicated," he added quickly. "I just needed to tell you, because when I saw you again, it all came back. The way I used to feel, the way I still do. You haven't changed, Emma. You're still you." Her eyes glistened. For a second, she couldn't look at him. Her heart was full of surprise, warmth, and a little ache for the years they'd lost. "You know," she said softly, "I used to wait for you to say something back then. I liked you too, but I thought you didn't feel the same." He smiled, almost sadly. "So we were both waiting for each other." They both laughed quietly at the irony. Two people who could have had something years ago, but were too unsure to say the words. The moment felt fragile but right, like something unfinished had finally found its ending. When dessert arrived, neither touched it. They were too lost in the quiet rhythm of rediscovery. The city lights outside danced on the glass, and the air between them hummed with something familiar yet new. Ryan reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't want to lose this again." She looked down at their hands, then back at him. "Neither do I." The honesty of that moment said everything words couldn't. There was no rush, no promises. Just two people finally admitting what had been sitting quietly in their hearts for years. After dinner, they walked outside. The sky was deep blue, the streets wet from a light drizzle earlier. They walked slowly, side by side, their shoulders brushing. Ryan stopped near the edge of the street, the glow of the lamps reflecting in his eyes. "You know," he said, "I used to imagine what it would be like if I ever saw you again. I thought maybe we'd talk for a few minutes, catch up, and then go our separate ways. I didn't expect—" He trailed off, and she smiled softly. "Didn't expect what?" He looked at her for a moment. "Didn't expect it to feel exactly like it used to. Maybe even stronger." Her heart skipped. Maybe that's what happens when the timing's finally right. Ryan smiled, a mix of relief and wonder in his expression. Maybe it is. They reached her building, neither ready to say goodnight. The rain began again, light and steady. Ryan held out his hand. "Do you still carry that lucky umbrella?" She laughed, pulling it from her bag. "Of course. Then I guess I'm safe from getting wet," he said, stepping closer under it. They walked slowly toward the door, the world around them fading beneath the sound of the rain. When they reached the entrance, Ryan turned to her. "Thank you for saying yes to dinner," he said softly. "Thank you for asking," she replied. There was a pause. One of those delicate pauses where both people know a moment is ending, but don't want it to. Then Ryan smiled faintly. "I'll call you tomorrow." "I'll be waiting," she said. He nodded, gave a small wave, and walked away, disappearing into the soft glow of the streetlights. Emma stood there, watching until he was gone, her heart quietly full. Inside, she leaned against the door, smiling without even realizing it. Everything about the night replayed in her mind. His words, his tone, the way his eyes looked when he said he still felt the same. It felt unreal, like something she had always wanted had finally begun to take shape. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She didn't need to question what she felt anymore. She knew. The connection wasn't just nostalgia. It was real, alive. And waiting. And somewhere across the city, Ryan sat awake too, staring out at the rain and smiling to himself, knowing he had finally said the words he should have years ago. For both of them, that night marked something simple but life-changing. The quiet moment when the heart finally speaks, and for once, the other heart listens. The days after that dinner felt brighter for Emma. Every morning carried a quiet excitement, a reason to check her phone, a reason to smile while painting, a reason to hum without realizing. Ryan kept his promise and called the next day. From then on, they spoke every night. Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter, memories, and plans that neither wanted to end. It didn't take long before those calls turned into real moments. Coffee breaks, evening walks, shared meals. What started as a simple reunion had slowly become something deeper, something she had once wished for but never believed could return. On a sunny Saturday, Ryan invited her to an art exhibition downtown. "You'll like this one," he said. "It's full of color, reminds me of you." She smiled at the message, touched by how naturally he noticed her world. When she arrived, he was already waiting, holding 2 tickets and his familiar smile. The gallery was filled with quiet music and soft light, the walls lined with paintings that told stories of love, loss, and hope. Emma walked slowly, studying each piece, while Ryan followed beside her, quietly watching her reactions more than the art itself. At one corner, she stopped in front of a painting of a woman standing in the rain, holding an umbrella. It reminded her of that night they met again. Ryan stepped closer, his voice gentle. "That one looks like you." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it's my lucky umbrella again." He looked at her then, really looked, and said softly, "That day changed everything for me." Her heart skipped. "How so?" Ryan hesitated for a moment, then said, "Because it felt like getting back something I didn't even know I was still missing." His tone was calm, but his eyes told her everything, that this wasn't just friendship or nostalgia. It was love quietly returning home. After the exhibition, they walked along the lake nearby. The air was crisp, the water reflecting the fading sunset. Emma felt at peace, a calm she hadn't known in years. They talked about simple things: his firm's new project, her upcoming art classes, and small plans like trying a new cafe or taking a short trip outside the city. But beneath the casual words, there was a softness, a shared understanding that this connection was becoming something real. They reached a small wooden pier. The wind brushed lightly through her hair. Ryan turned to her, his expression sincere. "Emma, can I tell you something?" She smiled. "You've been doing that a lot lately." He chuckled but grew serious again. "This one's different." He paused, searching for the right words. "I've had everything I thought I wanted: a good job, a stable life, people around me. But the truth is, none of it felt complete. Not until you came back." Emma looked at him, her throat tightening. "Ryan, I don't want to rush things," he said softly. "But I don't want to lose this either. You make everything feel right. And I don't want to spend another day pretending I don't know what that means." She didn't answer immediately. The moment felt too full for words. She looked at the water, then back at him, her eyes glistening. "You know, I spent years trying not to think about you," she said quietly. "And yet, every time I painted someone standing in the rain, I realized it was always you." Ryan took her hand gently, his touch warm and certain. "Then maybe it's time we stopped standing in the rain alone." Her heart swelled at the simplicity of it. No grand promises, no dramatic gestures, just truth, spoken softly between two people who had waited too long. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You're exactly what I always wanted, Ryan. I just didn't know I'd be lucky enough to get it one day." He smiled back, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then maybe today's that day." They stood there quietly, holding hands as the sky turned gold and pink. The moment didn't need anything more. The silence said it all. The lost time, the rediscovered love, the peace of finally finding what once felt impossible. Weeks passed, and their bond only grew stronger. They spent Sunday mornings in cafes, evenings by the lake, sometimes just sitting in her studio while she painted, and he sketched on a notepad. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was steady, calm, and real. Love, in its truest form, had found them both when they were finally ready for it. One evening, Emma hosted a small exhibition of her own. Ryan stood proudly among the guests, watching her move through the crowd with confidence and grace. When she came to him later, tired but happy, he said softly, "You've built something beautiful, Emma." She smiled. "I had help." He tilted his head. "From who?" "From someone who reminded me that life doesn't always give second chances. But sometimes it does." Ryan looked at her for a long moment before saying, "Then let's make sure we don't waste ours." Outside, light rain began to fall again. Emma stepped out with him, laughing as he opened that same old umbrella. "You still have it?" he teased. "Of course," she said. "It's lucky." They walked together under it, the city glowing softly around them. The rain no longer felt cold. It felt like home. Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, she felt complete. No doubts, no what-ifs, no missing pieces. In that quiet moment, she realized the truth. Love doesn't always come when you expect it. Sometimes it takes years, mistakes, distance, and growth. But when it returns, it feels like it never left. As they crossed the street, their laughter mixing with the rain. Emma thought back to the day she saw him again. The bus stop, the umbrella, the familiar voice that called her name. That small, ordinary moment had changed her entire life. And now, as she looked up at him walking beside her, she smiled and whispered softly, "This is what I always wanted." Ryan squeezed her hand gently. "And luckily," he said with a grin, "we got it that day." The rain fell, the city lights shimmered, and two people who once missed their chance finally found their way back. Not through luck, but through the quiet persistence of love that never really faded.